Welcome, everybody, to our H2 talk in May 2025. And today we will tackle an important element of the hydrogen history in Europe. It is called IPCEI or IPCEI or IPCEI. So it depends really on the country how this is pronounced. We are dealing with the important projects of common European interest, and we would like to highlight the key takeaways and what's next for the EU industrial policy. We all have seen that the European Commission gives a big effort to make the clean industrial deal a success. And of course, some instruments that we have at our hands, like the IPCEI, are important, but we need to understand, did they work? Do they work? And today we are looking into the hydrogen sector. I remember very well when we started in 2019 to launch basically mechanism based on this idea to give up to 100% funding by member states to projects for CAPEX and OPEX, but under certain preconditions. So basically to lift the competition rules, the harsh competition rules we have in Europe, under certain preconditions, and they have to be European, cross-border, and they have to fulfill important elements of the European strategy. For hydrogen, this all was the case. However, how did it work out? Let me introduce you to a study we did as Hydrogen Europe with our members. We have more than 600 members, and I have the honor to be the CEO of Hydrogen Europe. My name is Yorgos Chatzimarkakis. And why don't we go to the first slide? That's my name. To the first slide that really shows how it evolved. So the hydrogen IPCEI funding announced by the European Commission is here in a chart. These are the projects that have received up to 100% of funding to cover the gap. So we had different waves. The first wave was called High to Tech, and there you see the number of projects was 41, and you see also how much money went into it: 4.4 million of public funding and 8.8 of private. The second wave, a little bit less projects, 35, and similar amounts of public and private funding. The third was an infrastructure wave, similar amounts, and only in the fourth wave that was dedicated to mobility, we see considerable less amount of funding, but also less projects. In total, we see a quite interesting number of around 50 million of funding. That's good. However, there are problems. So that's the good news. If we go to the next slide, we will see that the problems come from paying the announced money, the announced level of money. And here you see big differences between countries there where the funding announced by the member state is in line with the funding allocated. But there are countries where there's a big gap between the announcement and the funding that has been put into practice. So 68% in total of the allocated of the announced projects has been allocated. And you see the difference of also in, you can call it a political culture or commitment to the industry, commitment to the sector, commitment to climate targets. Basically, you can see that countries like Germany, France, Italy, Netherlands, Belgium, and Denmark were quite high in paying out what they announced. So the gap in Germany, for instance, was only 9%. In Belgium, even less, only 6%. In Estonia, 0%. And that is mirrored, unfortunately, on the other side by countries where the gap is very high. I have the privilege to have two nationalities, so the German and the Greek. And I can see that my other country that I love very much, Greece, has a gap between announcing and paying out of 97%. So nearly 100% of what has been announced has not been paid out. And this, of course, is something we need to discuss today. We need to look into, and we need to understand how we can overcome these kind of projects. How does this reflect in the most important thing, the final investment decision, and that we see on the next slide. So when it comes to the IPCEI projects that reached this magic name, this magic word, the final investment decision, we can see over 5 years that roughly 21% have this status. That's good. That's 1/5, but that's also bad because it's only 1/5. So given all the amount of money that has been made available, not only by member states in their announcement, but also by the people working hard in the European Commission to rubber stamp this, to say this is okay, because they were overwhelmed by lots of projects, and then they had to go through them. And this is a little bit unfair that only part of this money has been paid out after so much work, after so much pre-notification processes, and after so much preparation. And this is what we want to discuss today. We also want to discuss avenues, how to improve that based on experiences. But before we go to our panel, I have the honor and the pleasure to welcome the guy who was there from the first minute and has suffered a lot, Demos Spatharis. He is the head of unit for the IPCEI Environment and Innovation at the European Commission at DG Comp. Demos, you are really the guy who went through all phases. I would be interested in how you assess these slides that I showed and these numbers. And thanks for the hard work you did, and thanks for being with us today. You have the floor.
Thank you, Jorgo. Good afternoon to everybody. Indeed, some telling statistics there from the analysis done by our friends in Hydrogen Europe. Thank you very much for sharing this with everybody, Jorgo. There are some reasons why the situation it is what it is, which is not so great, I must admit. And we have done, as you know, a lot of work in order to be able to approve all those IPCEI projects. Actually, the hydrogen value chain is the largest IPCEI sector that we have dealt with. And it's a pity that after 4 or 5 years later on, not a lot of projects have taken off, and we need to understand why. The first thing to understand is that the IPCEI instrument is a state aid instrument. There is no IPCEI fund, I mean EU central fund to finance IPCEIs. We are now, and I will come to this later, we are now working how better to synergize EU central funding with state aid funding. But currently, the IPCEI is funded, the IPCEI projects are funded exclusively or almost exclusively from national budgets. So, as we say in briefings to our commissioner, the member states are in the driving seat. So it is the member states that notify those IPCEIs and the projects, and it is the member states that tell the commission, we want to aid, subsidize those projects once you have approved them. And legally, to be totally direct, there is no way for the Commission to force a member state to spend the money on something it decides not to. So even if a member state notifies a project or an IPCEI, it has no legal obligation, and this has been decided by the European Court because it says that no company has a right to receive a subsidy. So this is where the situation. This is the situation where we are now. And this is why, as Yorgo said, some member states, and he used a member state close to his heart, Greece, to show that instead, indeed, they have not, let's say, followed on their announcements about supporting IPCEI projects, hydrogen projects. This may be because of a change in government policy. This is because of budgetary reasons. It could be because of other priorities that, in the meantime, have come up. So it is something that needs to be addressed, looking at the situation in each separate member state. And Greece is not the only one. Just to say, we use Greece as an example because it is indeed telling, but Greece is not the only one. But I think our colleagues, my colleague from DG Grow, who is following the implementation, and there is a recent staff working document of the Commission that has been published, shows how also the hydrogen implementation of the projects is going on, and I think it's more or less in line with what Yorgos has said. From the point of view of DG Competition, one of the criticisms that we have faced was the fact that it took so long for the IPCEIs to be approved. And then afterwards, once approved, again, there is the delays at the level of the member state in order to secure the approved funding, which we have already discussed. So now, how long it takes, it really depends how one counts, from when one counts. I mean, a company, it's only normal that it starts counting from the day, for example, it has replied to a call for expression of interest to submit a project that could potentially be part of an IPCEI if the member state chooses and selects that project. And indeed, that period until approval is quite long, especially in areas where the technology cycle is becoming less and less. It becomes smaller and smaller, rather. So, like for example, in microelectronics, where the technologies change every 2.5 years, for example. What have we done in order to speed up the IPCEIs? I mean, in hydrogen, in the hydrogen value chain, we had 4 IPCEIs. They were on the slide that the Yorgo has sent, so I will not repeat them. But what we have tried to do is we have tried to standardize the process by providing templates regarding the financial parameters, regarding how to present the projects. We have also introduced exemptions from the need to notify projects with relatively small aid amounts below 50 million, for example, where this can be approved at the level of the member state without requiring a notification approval by the Commission and still be accepted as part of the IPCEI ecosystem. And then I come to the latest and quite important announcement that was made, as Yorgos mentioned before, in the Clean Industrial Deal, which is in order to speed up the design of new IPCEIs and the approval, is the introduction of an IPCEI design support hub, which means what? It means that the Commission will be involved at an earlier stage with the identification of IPCEIs together with the member states in an advisory role, so that by the time the projects are ready for notification, given the advice that the Commission and DG Competition in particular will give to companies and member states, it will make the assessment very, very swift indeed. It will be a matter of a few months, of course, depending on the size of the IPCEI. So how many projects it will contain. Now coming to more specifically to some lessons learned from the hydrogen experience, I would say that indeed we had seen a bit of a rush, and if I can call it a hype, in order to very quickly develop the hydrogen market, which meant that a lot of the projects that were submitted were not of the best quality, and they required a lot of calibration, and that took longer than necessary. And then, of course, a lot of the projects were abandoned as well. And why? Because they were poorly conceived at the beginning, and they were also and because the hydrogen market did not develop, it's a nascent market, did not develop as quickly and as robustly as we had hoped, meaning, and also inflation and the costs changed dramatically, and the cost projections and the revenue projections showed in the famous funding gaps were off reality completely, and therefore a lot of companies decided that their projects needed to be either reformulated with new financial data because the amount, the funding gaps were not realistic anymore. All the companies decided, because the market was not developing as quickly as they had hoped, to abandon completely those projects. And this is why also we see perhaps why some member states are got a little bit of cold feet, if I may say so, and did not follow up with their funding promises that were made some years ago. So indeed, there are, and I have some statistics also that we keep here in DG Competition regarding projects, and I see from that on average about 40% of the projects that we have approved in those IPCEIs have either been withdrawn completely, so they will not be implemented whatsoever, or they are facing severe delays and they are asking for extension requests, or they are subject to significant changes because, as I said, the costs, the projections for costs and revenues have changed dramatically. So it is not the rosy picture that we had hoped. We have some successes. So I mean, if 40% are facing this kind of issues, it means that 60% are not facing so many issues. However, then the next hurdle is whether the member states, as Yorgo mentioned before, are following through with their promises to fund those projects. So this is the overall picture that we have from DG Competition's point of view. What I can say is that now the services of DG Competition are working very hard in order also in the context of the Joint European Forum for IPCEIs, which we also set up in order to discuss all these issues with member states and help member states, because, I mean, let's not hide it, not all the member states have the same administrative capacity like Germany or France, and therefore we are trying to have working groups there whereby we help all member states to reach a certain level of administrative capacity in order to be able to cope with the work, and also to share best practices, and also within my unit in DG Competition is inviting colleagues from the member states authorities to come and work with us so that they can see how things are done, and then when they go back, transpose the knowledge to their colleagues. And also this GEF, as we call it, the GEF IPCEI, also, and I think one of the colleagues later on will mention some of the decisions that have been taken there, but it's also identifying and endorsing future IPCEI value chains and candidates, as we call them, and the next ones that have been decided by the member states. But this is subject also to budgetary availability. Is one on circular advanced materials for clean technologies that could also be relevant for the hydrogen sector. Advanced semiconductor technologies, on artificial intelligence, and the last ones that have been discussed and endorsed is biotechnologies, clean, connected, and autonomous vehicles, and nuclear technologies. These are the future IPCEIs that are in the pipeline. And now, just to finish with the issue of national funding. So, as the president had announced, there will be the so-called competitiveness fund that will be created in the next MFF. This will also support IPCEI projects, and this will help also those member states that may not have the same fiscal capacity as the bigger member states also participate with projects in IPCEIs in order to address the issue of the so-called deep pockets problem, mainly that some member states participate in all IPCEIs, other member states do not because they don't have the same fiscal capacity. So this is an issue that the president has asked us all in the commission, the colleagues of DG Grow, the colleagues of DG Budget, and the colleagues of and also DG Competition to look at and to see how to make and synergize EU central funding with national state aid funding in order to make more funds available for these IPCEI projects, which are strategic, as we all know, are strategic projects which force the collaboration of companies across several member states. And this is the only way to make our industry, we think, in DigiComp, competitive enough to compete against the Americans and the Chinese. And with that, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, Yorgo and colleagues, and I'm happy to reply to any questions. Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much for the openness and the clear words. It sounds complicated because there are complex angles, but if I would ask you, which is the one bottleneck we need to fix? I mean, I understood is the deep pocket issue. That's one, and we can see also that fiscally benefited countries are more on it. But is it that? Is it just deep pockets or an administrative possibilities, or is it even more?
It's indeed the issue of fiscal space, as we call it, deep pockets. It's also the issue of speed. I mean, from identifying the area where we need to do an IPCEI, for designing the IPCEI, assessing it, and approving it, we need to shorten this period. And this is an area where both the Commission, including DG Competition, has to improve, and we are trying to improve in order to be faster. It's not about rubber stamping. It's about really assessing good quality projects, but also for the member states to improve their administrative capacity. And also, if I may say so, for politicians not to promise things that they cannot deliver as well. And then industry says, but you promised that kind of money as well. So it's also, I mean, it's a combination of factors whereby both industry For example, in hydrogen, we had projects that, as you know, Yorgo, they did not fit within the IPCEI rationale. They were not cross-border projects. They were standalone projects, and I'm referring especially to the steel sector, for example, which could not be part of the IPCEI, but we had to assess them under a different set of state aid rules, under the so-called climate and environmental and energy state aid rules. And we approved huge projects for this with huge amounts of aid. But they caused delays because some member states insisted that these were IPCEI material when they were not. Yeah. So it is indeed when the Commission will instead of seeing for the first time the projects when they are pre-notified to the Commission, if DG Competition and DG Grow, for example, are involved in the design phase with the member states, we can sort out all these difficulties at an earlier stage and therefore make the assessment quicker. But we can approve thousands and thousands of projects. The issue is implementation later on. And I know that my colleagues in DG Grow are working very, very hard in order to find solutions. But the main solution is budgetary. The main solution is to ensure that there is enough budget. And this is where I think the introduction and the creation of the Competitiveness Fund with an IPCEI envelope within that fund will help. Thank you.
Thank you. You were so humble not to say that simply you had also not enough people. So because this is also an issue, but you covered already two of the questions that we have in our chat. We have in our chat a question about that lengthy process and what measures the EU has put in place, especially in the pre-notification process to accelerate. But there's one question I would still ask you, whether you have statistics of IPCEI applicants who have withdrawn from application since start of the hydrogen IPCEI. Is there any statistic? You don't need to say the number, but whether you also look at this, monitor this?
We had some withdrawals indeed because some of the projects were not mature enough, and the financial data that didn't make sense. So we asked that those were either revised considerably or withdrawn, and then it's up to the member state. As I said, it's a member state driven process to either revise or withdraw them. And indeed, in some cases, member states decided to withdraw. But as I said at the beginning, I think perhaps at the very beginning in 2019, there was such a big hurry to get on with the hydrogen, and I can fully understand why. But this led to a number of projects that were not mature enough or not well thought of. That some companies also jumped on the bandwagon, thinking, it's going to be, it's going to be raining euros, guys. So let me not have an umbrella about it.
Okay. Thanks for that, and thanks for keeping your patience with the sector. We also heard about other interesting IPCEIs that you are going into, and there are a lot of links to hydrogen. And you mentioned nuclear, so also with nuclear production of electricity, there is space also for hydrogen. So this is all new news, good news, and thanks for your answers, your openness, and your continued support. Thank you, Demos, for this. You mentioned already DG Grow, so your partners and your colleagues from the other Director General. And we have in our panel today as a first speaker, a member of that DG Grow department. That's Jacek Truszyński. He's acting head of unit, and he's with us. Basically, Jacek has also held various positions within the Commission for the past 15 years, mainly focused on energy policy and investment support. So you're an expert. So it's good to have you here. And my question to you to start with is, when the IPCEI was launched with great ambition back in 2019, the road was interesting and light, but has become quite complex since then. And can you tell us more about your role in that IPCEI process, so DG Grow, because you are continuing to play an intensive role there? And why do you think the projects are experiencing delays? How are you supporting them? We heard from DG Comp. What's DG Grow's take? Jacek, Czech, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. The role of GROW is essentially in monitoring the IPCEIs. And I think it's a very timely discussion we have today, because you, Hydrogen Europe, you have published your report. We have published ours just yesterday. For the first time, we have published in the form of a staff working document, a first report on the results of the monitoring of the IPCEIs. It also includes an analysis of our project pipeline in the Clean Hydrogen Alliance. And so indeed, I mean, there the picture is rather bleak. That's something we have already heard today. We have even more striking statistics than the ones that have been quoted earlier. Because, you know, if you, for example, look just at the two IPCEIs for which we have the most data, the high to tech and the high to use, there 2/3 of projects are not on track. And so, you know, the role of GROW is monitoring, and then the question is why? Why to monitor? I think there are two aspects here. First, we wanted to look really into the reasons for those delays, and I can speak about those reasons in a second. And so that allows us to identify early on barriers that potentially need to be overcome through policy adjustments. So it's really to feed into our other policy making streams. So it's kind of a, you could say, negative role, identifying barriers and issues, reasons for delays. But there's also a, let's say, more positive aspect here, also linked to informed policy making. And one example is the Energy and Industry Geography Lab, where together with the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, we superimpose this information, detailed information about the projects on a map, and that will hopefully also allow us to better plan in the coming years hydrogen infrastructure. So essentially, it's really about nudging member states towards a faster implementation, identifying early barriers, gathering data that will allow us to make policy adjustments. And then you asked, Yorgos, about the reasons for those delays. I can refer to the results of the survey we have conducted among the project developers. And here I would refer mainly to, well, the first one, we of course know, funding issues and a lack of off-takers. Second element that was mentioned most often, the immaturity of technology, then the regulatory and permitting issues, access to electricity, investment costs, and finally, significant uncertainties due to projected substantial increases in costs of capital and operational expenditures, given the still nascent state of the market. So you can see that the reasons is really a mix of, let's say, project-specific elements, but above all, I would say, unfavorable framework conditions still for the hydrogen market. Thank you.
Many thanks, Jacek. Indeed, unfavorable, but also unfavorable for everybody. So higher costs, access to capital is something which affects all of us. But I would at that stage already say one thing, because I remember the back enthusiasm back then in 2019. Maybe the expectation that was created by all of us back then was over-realistic. And now we are possibly back on track, on normal, but we have created a big expectation. And really, I don't exclude anybody, including us, of course. but okay, we will cope. We now need to learn from that experiences. That there are different approaches to it is proven by the Netherlands. And I would like to welcome Mirte Kuenen. She is a senior policy advisor in the Ministry of Climate Policy and Green Growth in the Netherlands. She has been working in the energy field for many, many years and is responsible for developing national instruments to stimulate both the production and that's important for hydrogen, the demand for renewable hydrogen. She has led several initiatives, including the European IPCEI Hydrogen Subsidy Program and a special program. It's the Dutch OWE subsidy scheme for electrolyzers, very successful, and many people are looking into it. So the Netherlands, Mirte, has taken a unique approach to the IPCEI funding disbursement with national auctions, defining the amount of funding available for each project after the positive notification of the European Commission. So you have gone another way. Why has the Netherlands taken this approach, and what are your lessons learned in the process today? And is this a good example also for others? Mirte, you have the floor, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, and good to share some thoughts among several stakeholders today. Yes, as you mentioned, in the Netherlands, we've taken a different approach to other member states. Although I think when we started, we didn't actually know what the approach was of other member states. So we were all learning along the way. It was all new for us, the whole IPCEI framework and how to align our national processes with the European process. So I think that's what brought us thinking in, okay, how can we allocate our funds to a few companies, because we didn't have enough funding for all projects that were interested in joining the IPCEI. So that's why we decided to organize a tender nationally, and we tried to align the timelines with the European notification procedure timelines. So ideally, we would like to have selected the project and at the same time get the approval for the funding for that project. But it turned out that this was quite challenging to really align the timelines in that sense. For us, the reason to go for a tender is that, well, first of all, we didn't have sufficient funding for all the interested parties. I mean, we should have a way to select the projects nationally. And also, I think we have the legal framework that we have to operate in is a bit strict in that sense. We have to be transparent and be very diligent in the way we spend our public funds. It's quite difficult to get funding internally between our ministries. So when we want to claim funding from our Ministry of Finance, we have to be able to prove that we have been very diligent in the way we selected the projects. So that's how we came up with having the tender. It has been very challenging because at some point it wasn't clear from the beginning exactly how the timelines would look like on a European level. And then we tried to also plug in our national process in the same timeline. And then there's changes going on, which makes it difficult. So for projects, I think it did lead to some extra work because they had to go through both processes. I think if we would do this again, we probably try to, I think the thing that Demos just mentioned on the IPCEI Design Support Hub is very helpful. So already in the beginning, be clear on what exactly do we expect from each other, at what moments, how are we going to align our processes. That will be very helpful. I think it's very important to be predictable, both nationally and on the European level, for the projects to make it feasible, because eventually we saw that this led to quite some administrative burden, not only our national process, but also the European process, and then having to align it, which made it very difficult, specifically for the small, medium enterprises to join the IPCEI. And I think we should find ways to make it easier, and also find flexibility, because projects, they change along the way. The initial call for interest was already in 2020 or 2021, I think, to be right. And then some projects only got their eventual conclusions on the notification and also the funding decision only like in 2024. So there's a few years going by, and projects obviously change. I mean, some partners might drop out, have to find new partners. They make different technology choices, different suppliers, and we have to be able to be flexible in that process. And it's a thing to keep in mind for next rounds, I think.
Many thanks, and dank u wel. And if you look at the statistics, so the Netherlands has performed really, really well. Only Estonia was, paying out 100% of what they announced. In the Netherlands, the gap is only 4%. That's the lowest considerable number here. So congratulations. It seems.
Thank you.
It seems to work, and yeah, basically this is also one of the tasks that for us to have a best practice idea, and it seems that Netherlands here have gone into the right direction. We all can learn from that. Let's look into projects now, concrete projects or concrete member companies of Hydrogen Europe and companies, corporates that are on the other side, basically, of this exercise. And our guest today is from Italy, Giovanna Villari, from Green Solutions. She's the Green Solutions Commercial Manager at Saipem, and chemical engineer with lots of professional experiences over the last year. You were active in a project that is called the Puglia Green Hydrogen Valley in South Italy, part of the High to Infra wave. It's developed by Edison and Saipem, your company, and Sosteneo, SGR, with you, Giovanna, implementing it. The project plans have 2 plants in Brindisi and Taranto, so you will explain. But could you explain how this project really works? Why have you chosen a consortium for submission, and what are the benefits for you that you have gained from this approach in IPCEI especially? Giovanna, welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you to you, and thank you for inviting me to this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. As you were mentioning, I'm commercial manager for Green Solution in Saipem. Saipem is a global solution provider in the energy and infrastructure sectors with worldwide experience in the EPC project, both onshore and offshore. I was involved since the beginning in this project and also in the application of the IPCEI. The Puglia Green Hydrogen Valley project developed by Edison, Sosteneo and Saipem represent one of the first initiatives in Italy for the large-scale production of green hydrogen, and is combining several hydrogen applications into this integrated ecosystem. As you were mentioning, the project plans to build and operate 2 green hydrogen production plants with an overall capacity of 160 megawatt, powered by renewable electricity produced by dedicated PV parks and integrated by renewable energy made available through the electric grid via green PPAs in compliance with the delegated act on RFMU. The project is located in the south of Italy, in Puglia, that is a national region leader for the renewable energy production, which has also developed a specific legislation to promote green hydrogen production. The produced hydrogen will be injected and transported to the end user in the region through a hydrogen network composed by both repurposed and new pipeline under development by SNAM, the Italian TSO, contributing to the decarbonization of the nearby industry, where are present the energy-intensive industry, such as steelmaking and the refinery industry. The Puglia Green Hydrogen plants can be integrated through the SNAM pipeline project in the future with the hydrogen-ready infrastructure, the European hydrogen backbone, interconnecting the Puglia Green Hydrogen Valley with other national and European hydrogen valley. So this is a unique integrated project covering the entire value chain from renewable energy resources, hydrogen production, oxygen reuse, energy transportation system and integration with the final end users. Edison, Sustainio and Saipem are linked between them, having established this dedicated special purpose vehicle for the development, construction and operation of the Puglia Green Hydrogen project. This approach was chosen to combine the strength and the expertise of each partner, ensuring robust project management, but also innovative solution and comprehensive technical knowledge. This collaborative effort allow us to maximize resources, also share risk, and in order to achieve greater efficiency in the project execution. In particular, Edison is making available its expertise in the supply, production, and sale of electricity. Sustainio, its knowledge in the greenfield infrastructure investment, and us as Saipem, as FID, as the EPC contractor, can plan and execute all the activities needed to complete the capital project, engineering, procurement, project management, commissioning, startup, to satisfy the project requirement and expectation.
Thank you. Excellent. I have a very short question. Would you go through that process again?
Through the IPCEI process, it was really, really hard and long path, but let's say we learned a lot. Because you have to remember that during this IPCEI process, we had also the opportunity, the famous matchmaking, in which we were connected with other hydrogen valleys. And this is really fruitful for us because thanks to this exchange of information, we learn a lot. So all the lessons learned of this process are made available through the valleys. And so we are finding also in conjunction a solution to overcome the difficulties that, of course, for the first movers are usual, let's say.
Excellent. I see Demos nodding. So you want to say a few words on that? You want to comment on that? Because that's also part of the exercise, to bring companies together.
Yes, indeed. I think it's one of the key advantages and requirements of the IPCEI process is to create an ecosystem within the EU. And this is achieved through integration and these collaborations cross-border so that companies can establish contacts and connections and that will help them execute their projects, will give them new ideas. They will also provide input to the projects of other companies, and this helps a lot. And I think, indeed, Giovanna said it very correctly. It is a very valuable learning lesson. And I think most of the companies, even though I can appreciate what she said, that it was not easy, but in the second IPCEI will be easier. But this learning of what there is in the market, practically, I think these matchmaking events that we organize in order to design IPCEIs, I think the companies find it very valuable as well.
Super.
So indeed,
super.
This is how you create the European ecosystems in strategic value chains, as we call it.
And cross-border. So this is something very, very important.
Yes.
Thank you. So nice, nice insight. Let's turn to another company, yet another company that is a beneficiary of IPCEI. And that's Alstom in this case. We have the pleasure to welcome Stefan Kaba, who is he had different positions in the company, mainly in business development activities, including metros in Asia, TGV in France and Morocco. And he is with Alstom already since 1998. At the end of 2019, Stefan took the lead in the hydrogen development programs to strengthen Alstom's strategy in zero emission. Stefan, Alstom has been selected for two different IPCEI projects, one in France and one in Italy. The aim is to develop a zero-emission innovative solutions in the European rail network. How have these projects progressed? what are the advantages of being an IPCEI project and what challenges have arisen since then. I think you are also showing us 2 slides to underpin your message. Stefan, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Jorgo, and thank you very much for organizing this webinar. It's a very big pleasure for me to be able to present the complexity of this Alstom project under the IPCEI program. And I will start anyway, just to say a few words about the context, where we are coming from, where we are with the IPCEI, and where we want to go still with the IPCEI program. In 2 words, just to illustrate where we were coming from, Alstom, since the beginning, in a very early stage, strongly believed on the powerful of H2 trains to green the mobility sector. You know that the mobility sector today is responsible for 1/3 of the CO2 emission, and it is clear that the train has a key role to play to green the economy. So we did the job first without the IPCEI to try to demonstrate that a train with hydrogen was feasible. It is something we did in 2018 with the first 2 trains in the world that have been put into commercial operation. So it was a very major breakthrough for the rail industry. Doing this way, Alstom succeeded to demonstrate that H2 for rail application was relevant. But it was not the end of the story. It was not the end of the journey for hydrogen in the rail sector. So thanks to the IPCEI, what we have done, we have set new strategic ambitions at different levels. The first one was at component level for traction equipment, such as the fuel cell, to try to develop higher performances in terms of life duration, to develop higher reliability as well, and also to have a better competitiveness for this kind of strategic component. And also what we wanted to do and what we are doing today with the IPCEI was a development of new type of trains with locomotives for freight application and also new type of regional passenger trains. So you can see on this picture how it is complex and the structure of this IPCEI program, which has been validated, part of the I2Tech Wave 1, validated in July 2022. So you can see that both Alstom France and also on the right-hand side of this slide, Alstom Italy, as Jorgo said, are involved in this IPCEI program. So it is a binational program. It is the global Alstom IPCEI projects are covering 4 integrated projects. So the question is why it is integrated. It is very simple to answer, because the first key part of this project is what you have on the top of the slide, which is the traction bricks, the component needed to make the motion of one train or one locomotive. Where you have the fuel cell, but you have also the batteries, you have some converters, you have some H2 tanks as well, and also everything related to the monitoring of a system of those components. And those bricks, they have been designed, and they are designed today, part of the IPCEI program, to be integrated in rolling stock in rail applications. So you can see on the left-hand side, you can see some freight application, which is a kind of wagon generator. There is also a locomotive shunting, which is envisaged in this program. And there is, from Italy, there is the new type of passenger trains made with what we call a power car. So a power car, this is a kind of wagon integrated into the rail passenger train, where you have all H2 components. So it is not distributed all along the train. It is concentrated in this dedicated wagon to free a maximum of volume in the rest of the train. So this is the structure of the program. Where do we stand in terms of progress? So maybe you can go to the next slide, if you can. I just wanted to illustrate still the same slide. Yes, thank you very much. I think to provide some illustration on the progress with concrete results is very interesting. So what you can see on the left-hand side is what we call is one of the key major steps achieved within the IPCEI program, which is to develop a fuel cell which is standardized. In the past, in the first two trains, as I mentioned before, we put into a commercial operation in Germany. It was not the case. You had many components spread all over the train without any box around those components. We wanted to set a specific box called a fuel cell power unit that we can reuse on different type of trains, and it is called the standardization. So we developed this fuel cell. It has been integrated in a regional train in France, and we started the test, the dynamic test, last year in December 2024. So we are targeting those trains to enter into commercial service somewhere in 2026. So it was done in France by Alstom France through the IPCEI France. You can see on the right hand side, so this is still some regional trains. This is the one which has been developed, which has been designed by the Alstom Italian team and financed by the IPCEI program through the Italian minister. So this train exists today. It is not, a PowerPoint train. It is a real train. There is a power car, so you can see the storage tank in this power car, and it has been integrated in an existing design of train. And now the dynamic test started already. It started in April last year. And we are targeting those trains to enter into commercial service somewhere in 2026 as well. There is also some bi-mode development ongoing, because the train you can see on the picture from Italy, this is 100% H2 train, but there is also a need to have bi-mode train with catenary and also with hydrogen. This is development ongoing, and there is a very good progress for that. And last image in the bottom of this slide, this is what we have done in France. So I come back to France again, about shunting locomotive, and also what we call this tender H2 with a kind of wagon generator, embarking those components, including the fuel cell as well. So the architectures have been frozen, which is not very simple, because we have some limited volume, we have some significant constraint in terms of weight, because in the rail applications there is some weight limit we cannot exceed. So we have frozen the architectures, the performances have been confirmed, and we expect to have an homologation of those components somewhere in 2029. So this is what we have done. So we are very proud anyway, and we thank again this IPCEI organization to allow us to do that, because without the IPCEI we would never have performed such development. But this is not the end of the story as well. Why? Because there is some challenges, major challenges that are paving the way in front of us. The first one is an issue in terms of fuel cell duration. Why? Because we have noticed that the life duration of the existing fuel cell is not sufficient by far. And it is some return on experience we have on the existing first two trains in operation in Germany. And the performances in terms of life duration is below what we have declared as the state of the art in the IPCEI. So it is a big issue, and we need to sort out this issue, because it will put, if we do not do anything about it, it will put at risk all the global economics of the H2 rail ecosystem. So we went through in-depth investigation, and the conclusion confirms that we need to perform additional development at a level we never foreseen before, because we need to go down now to the stack level and to the power module level. We thought initially we could find a stack available in the market for trains, but it is not the case. We need to make some adaptation of existing stacks to provide the right level of life cycle, life duration for those key fuel cell components. Another point, which is standardization norms. it is something which is very important. Why? Because, you know, the rail sector is a niche market. We do not have, comparing to automotive, comparing to the truck industry, we do not have thousands and thousands of trains. What we need to do is to make sure that there will be some convergence on structural, on critical components. I'm talking about the fuel cell, I'm talking about the H2 tanks, and to have similar norms shared with sector like the truck industry, because the truck industry will deliver huge volumes. And we want to benefit those volumes. It is very important anyway for the global economics of the H2 rail system. To do that, we started anyway to launch some workshop. So we are working with the IEC, sorry. We are working as well on ISO level in different workshops, worldwide level, to favor and to converge on those kind of standard norms, common norms. And there is a link, because it is very important anyway to make sure that in terms of certification, you know, the product we are developing today, they need to be certified. We need to have the homologation of those products. It takes time. And the problem is we need to convince the European rail certification bodies that they need to wait the convergence of the norms before setting an homologation framework. We had some headwinds because they wanted to have some homologation framework frozen now, but it is not good, because if we do that, we will not benefit from common standards with the truck industry. So we are very convinced we need to finalize this convergence work on norms and then to set the homologation frame for the rolling stock application. And in terms of market, so it is sure that it is a bit slower. So everybody said that just before me. It is slower than expected. There is low technical maturity. There is so for the fuel cell system, because, you know, we have these lifetime issues. So the rail operator, they want to wait and to make sure that we will deliver a fuel cell with the right performances in terms of life duration. We are facing absence of infrastructure, which is not easy the rail operator as well to boost anyway and to go to H2 trains. And there is no diesel ban. The issue we are facing as well in many European countries is that there is no diesel ban today. So there is some headwind a little bit, pushing some rail operator to come back to the diesel train. So we are facing those issues, and we need to have the support of public bodies at Europe level, at member state level, to this kind of to answer this kind of ambition.
Merci.
So,
that's excellent. That's excellent. That also shows that I think you took a lot of lessons from this project, cross-border. We have seen in the chat that some people have goosebumps. Andrea got goosebumps when seeing the logo, so it's good to see the logo of Alstom in combination also with hydrogen, and I share this fascination. However, there is a question to you, Stefan, in the chat also with regards to the life expectancy of the fuel cell. You answered it somehow already. I think it's not crystal clear yet, but we can see a lot of experiences that you have got there. Can I turn into a discussion with all of you, because there are some dedicated questions to you in the chat, and I would like to come to these questions. I would like to start with the European Commission, because we have here a question to Jacek with regards to the report that you mentioned, the staff working paper. Is that public? There's a clear question here whether this is public and whether people could have access to this paper, or at least the elements that you mentioned here. And also there is the question how you do the monitoring and which model you apply to monitor, to do the impact monitoring. Maybe you can answer this question already.
Thanks for that. Yeah, so indeed, the report is public. I'm happy to maybe share with you, Yorgos, the link, and then this could be shared with the participants of the seminar. So I mean, the report is not based on any modeling because it's not forward-looking but backward-looking. So rather than modeling, we apply simply a set of KPIs that have been developed together with the JRC, and that forms a unified reporting template for IPCEIs, and so this will be further developed now, also in cooperation with COMP. But indeed, I will share the report after that seminar.
Excellent. Then we have questions, especially to DG Comp, also here, which is the questions about the processes, whether they can be digitalized. The process demos, it's not digital so far, and whether this could be digitalized. And then by Thomas Volz, we have a longer comment who explains that it's true that national funding delays play some role, but he also says that the long and stepwise approval process undoubtedly, he says, played a major role in project delays. He therefore finds it unnecessarily that 40% have not been approved, because the vast majority of those 40% have not withdrawn and indeed are experiencing delays, but also due to the approval processes. And they appreciate the efforts to accelerate this process to future IPCEIs, but would also appreciate some recognition of the Commission's part in contributing to delays. I think you mentioned that already, Demos, but maybe you can say a few words about digitalizing the process, about making it a little bit more accessible to everybody and faster. Is there something in your planning?
Well, I thought we were pretty well digitalized. I don't really understand. I don't really understand what the gentleman means by digitalization.
Okay.
If he could explain, that would be I would be very happy to look into it. Yes.
Excellent. Please put it then into the chat, and so we will come back to it also in written. And then, of course, whether other waves or calls in hydrogen are planned. Maybe this is something that goes to Jacek and to Demos. Demos, is there something in the planning, next wave?
I'm not aware of anything, any new wave regarding hydrogen. But as I said, for hydrogen-related projects, it's not only the IPCEI instrument that is there. A lot of other companies and member states are using the climate and environmental and energy guidelines in order to secure state aid for hydrogen-related projects, and especially those that do not entail cross-border activities, like, for instance, the deployment of new equipment to switch from fossil fuels to hydrogen in energy-intensive industries. All these kind of projects, very important in the steel, in the cement factor, in the chemical sector, etc., are dealt outside the IPCEI instrument by those other rules, and we are working even today with those cases.
Excellent, thanks. Let me turn to the member states, to Mirte. Is there budget foreseen from the Dutch side for other IPCEI projects? I mean, needs to have a next wave, but is there still budget? And how do you explain the delays despite funding? So in the Netherlands, you have funding, but still you have the delays. What's your explanation to that?
Yeah, so we see that even the funding that we granted, which, by the way, was not always exactly the amount that was approved because of our tender procedure. But even though we granted the money, it turned out not to be enough for many projects because of many cost increases, difficult market circumstances that you're all aware of. So you mentioned in the beginning that we are also working on our OWE scheme, which is the main scheme for hydrogen production in the Netherlands. And we decided to create a way to have the IPCEI projects to so that they can participate in the OWE as well. So they can use that as a top up for their already received subsidy. So the IPCEI is just you can just keep it and then apply to OWE. And compete with other projects on the total subsidy amount. So then we take IPCEI into account, so it remains fair. And then be able to have a top up on the OWE from the OWE scheme. But then still, even we are now in the process of evaluating the OWE project, so I can't really say much about the effect of that yet. But my hunch is that still, even if we grant sufficient funding to the project, there are so many challenges in moving towards FID that's not only about sufficient funding. So even projects that receive a lot of funding, they still might struggle to take an FID because it's difficult to contract offtake for the long term. There's other challenges like the rising costs in infrastructure, gaining the right PPAs, securing the PPAs for your electricity supply. So many challenges going on there. And that's why we think even apart from granting funds, we have to work on all different steps in the value chain to actually get the market going. And funding is not the only solution here, I think.
It's interesting what you just said. Because of some delays, prices go up, and then the ratio, changes dramatically, and so the project will have problems. So I understand exactly what you're saying here. We experienced in our assessment the same. One question goes to Giovanna here, or two questions even. It's about how you plan to deliver the hydrogen to the consumers. And the second question is whether you plan to store hydrogen in your project. Giovanna, you want to answer this?
Sure. As I was mentioned before, the hydrogen produced by the two plants will be injected and transported to the end user in the region through a hydrogen network composed by repurposed and new pipelines that is under development by SNAM. In order to reach the final end user in the region that are steel making and refinery industry. So you have to consider that there will be a huge pipeline that will be repurposed from natural gas to green hydrogen, where it can be injected, of course, not only the green hydrogen that will be produced by the Puglia Green Hydrogen Valley, but also by others valley, in order to collect it and send to the final end user that we are speaking about hard-to-abate industry, so they need a lot of hydrogen in order for relevant decarbonization. So we plan to have, let's say, buffer, but you have to consider that there is this huge pipeline that can be also considered a sort of a big storage.
One question to Stefan with regards to the difference between Italy and France. So the question is whether you have seen a difference of the treatment, difference of speed in these two between these two countries. It's because you have both experiences. Can you answer that shortly?
Yeah, no, I think in terms of implementation of the agreement with public authorities, it has been done quite in parallel. So there was no big differences between Italy and France. The main difference we have is an issue in terms of funding availability. We are benefiting from different public funding sources, and they have a deadline. And the problem, they have a validity date, I can say. So the issue we are facing in Italy, for example, they benefit from the PNRR, and this one is available up to the end of 2026, which is not in line with the global time frame of the IPCEI. So there is a disconnect between this funding source in Italy and the time frame of the IPCEI. And this is an issue. It is an issue for Alstom Italy, and it is also an issue for France, because every delay we may have in the fuel cell development, for example, will impact as well the planning of the program in Italy. It is very interconnected. So we need to have flexibility with funds available on all along the IPCEI duration expected.
Thanks. Merci beaucoup. One final question to Demos before we go to a closing presentation by the Austrian government. There's a question with regards to the support hub. Is this hub set up with experts from governmental and EU side, or is it also planned to have experts from industry on board? Is the cooperation support model with industry IPCEI applicants already clear, and when does it come? Maybe you can answer this.
Yes, indeed. I mean, the purpose of the hub would be to introduce the Commission earlier in the process in order to help member states and in order to accelerate the whole process. Because once the Commission, for example, DG Comp, together with experts from other Commission services like the JRC or from DG Energy or from DG Move or from DG Grow would be there, the Commission will be aware at an earlier stage of it will help the design, so unnecessary questions are avoided later on. It will know what kind of projects, more or less, would be coming up, so this will accelerate the assessment. And in relation to the question about which experts, there will be experts from the Commission, as I mentioned, and of course experts also from the member states. And of course, the member states could also invite experts from their own industry to participate. So from the Commission point of view, there is no objection if experts from industry would also participate in the workings of the Design Hub.
Excellent. Clear answer and very good and exhaustive answer. So we have seen there's a lot of interest also about the next steps. And here comes Falco Loha from the Austrian, he's the policy officer at the Austrian Federal Ministry for Mobility, Innovation and Technology. Falco, with a famous Austrian name, has been there from minute number one. So he knows all the stages of the IPCEI on hydrogen, and he will give us basically his assessment. So the key takeaways and what's next for the industrial policy in IPCEI out of Austrian perspective, but for the whole of Europe. Falco, you have the floor. You have some slides.
I do, yes. Good afternoon from my side. We can switch to the next slide already. What I will do in the upcoming 8 to 10 minutes. Next slide, please. I will introduce to you a new IPCEI candidate. It's the IPCEI Circular Advanced Materials. Here we'll focus on the process, the content, scope, the relevance for the H2 industry, but also we'll talk about lessons learned from past IPCEIs, not only the hydrogen ones, but also others. Next slide, please. So some words on the process, and we will touch upon some things that also other colleagues in this talk have touched upon, especially Demos. So the IPCEI CAM, that's short for Circular Advanced Materials, is an IPCEI candidate that has been developed under Austrian leadership in the Joint European Forum. That's the Member State and Commission Forum. And it has been developed in close cooperation with industry representatives at EU level, but also national level. It was adopted in the Joint European Forum by the high-level formation by altogether 50 member states. And after this adoption in last November, it was moved into the so-called design phase. And this is the phase that we are in now at the moment. Austria holds the role of an interim coordinator, but please, for obvious reasons that I will elaborate on now, please allow me to spend 2 to 3 sentences on this. Just yesterday, we needed to inform Austrian interested companies that Austria, in the recent budgetary negotiations, was not successful to allocate a dedicated budget for this IPCEI, which is unfortunate and also disappointing, not only for us, but also interested companies. This, of course, is due to budgetary restrictions and austerity measures on national level, and this is certainly also a problem. One problem that was also touched upon earlier this afternoon. However, and this is my second message, the IPCEI is pushed forward by now still 13 member states. We will most certainly find a new coordinator, and I am personally very optimistic that the IPCEI will fly in the future. So this is a key message that I wanted to elaborate on. What is the design group currently doing now? We are focusing on scoping, and I will touch upon this in the upcoming slides. And we are doing this together, as I mentioned before, with national and EU industry consultations. And many of the objectives were actually extracted from stakeholder discussions and surveys that we had and are currently having with industries. So what's the rough timeline? There will be among participating member states a joint call window between, let's say, summer and November. We are currently forming the narrative, the scope for that. What are we doing then? We will then, as usual, have matchmaking events, and we are planning to have the assessment phase next year. Next slide, please. So what's the targeted impact? And as you can see here, we want to really focus on recent or also recently highlighted and developed objectives. On European level, we want to strengthen Europe's strategic autonomy and also secure the EU's industrial competitiveness. Very important paradigms in these days, but also we want, and that's kind of engraved in the title, we want to drive forward the transition towards a circular low carbon economy. Next slide, please. And for this, we really, in our work in the Joint European Forum, we wanted to create objectives that really go down that line. Next slide, please. So the main objective is to reach major advancements in circularity, but there are, and I will not dive into this, there will be a couple of secondary objectives that actually come directly from industry. SSBD, data continuity was highlighted within our stakeholder discussions last November, but also scale up and performance orientation. So what will we do next? We will select certain dedicated technologies and markets, and you will see a whole array of them on the next slide. Here, after having selected a certain number, and this could be 3, this could be 5 or 10, depends also on the demand and EU level objectives, then we would, for each of these technologies markets, form material value chains from sourcing over eco-design to manufacturing to recycling and then application. Next slide, please. And you can see here in the bottom section, in the blue lines, a whole array of technologies and markets along the 3 priority areas of energy, mobility, and electronics. And here we stick very close to the Commission's communication on advanced materials for industrial leadership, with certain application areas and drawn from these application areas, certain technologies and markets. And here, if we move to the next slide, we highlighted those that are of either indirect or direct relevance for the H2 industry as a whole, but also to IPCEI H2 beneficiaries. And you see that along at least 2 of the 3 priority areas, there is a high relevance for the hydrogen industry. When we talk about materials, the IPCEI, when developing this narrative, wants to be material open. So we want to allow all materials to be able to be centered by the IPCEI. So just to give you some examples, as for hydrogen production, this could be advanced catalysts or corrosion-resistant electrodes. For storage, this could be high-strength steels and aluminum or composite materials. For transport, it could be hydrogen-compatible pipeline steels, polymer liners, and so on and so forth. So there's really no restriction as for materials. Next slide, please. So this was the scope and the status quo, state of play of the plans of the design group in a nutshell. The messages that I want to send, as there might be a focus on some of the technologies, as I said, they will be selected. Some of these will be selected in June. There might be a relevance for the H2 industries, and also they might be of interest for your companies. The technologies and markets will be selected in June and will be integrated in the narrative and in the calls in summer, fall. And if interested, please contact your respective national authorities. How can you find out whether your member state is part of this process? You can either contact me. My email address is on the very first slide, and I believe the slides will be handed over to you. But also on the IPCEI Joint European Forum website, there's a list of contact people from each member state. You can also contact them. Next slide, final slide, lessons learned from previous IPCEIs. We talked a lot today about the shortcomings. We also talked to a lesser extent, I think, about what has been done in the previous month. And I think the Joint European Forum actually is a best practice example of how member states and the Commission, together with industry, is working on improvements on IPCEI. Yes, the fruits we still need to harvest, but we have been working quite hard in the past months. So impacts that we can expect already in this IPCEI or in the other upcomings are, and I'm only listing a few examples, harmonized national governance and procedures along the entire life cycle. So not only, for example, when it comes to aligned call texts in all of the member states, also when it later on comes to, for example, monitoring, we want to have aligned systems. But there are limitations to that. Of course, we cannot force member states to then finally disperse budget, but we can work on really best practice examples. We are working on the associated partner status that Demos before has elaborated on. I think he didn't call it associated partner status, but that's the status for projects below the certain threshold of 50 million euros that can be funded quite flexibly under the GBER by member states. And this will be part of IPCEI CAM. We are working on an improved assessment phase, and here I would not say faster notification phase. I think Demos would hunt me for that, but rather I really want to say that also member states, industries will have more knowledge, and there will be a lot of preparatory work done in the design phase with the help of the support hub. And we could already feel this in the IPCEI CAM process, that the Commission was involved at a very early point in time, and that really helped us as a coordinator and also other member states. And then lastly, there will be clearly communicated rules on co-financing of projects. So both member states and industries will have a better knowledge on co-financing possibilities. So we believe that this will in the end lead to increased efficiency, speed and flexibility of IPCEIs, and also an improved communication. So I want to really send out an optimistic picture, despite also the bad news that I just conveyed to you, that also kind of we can feel personally in Austria at the moment. But I think in terms of this IPCEI with a huge H2 relevance, I think we can be quite optimistic. Back to you, Jorgo.
Many thanks, Falco. I think to end on an optimistic note is very, very good. The learning curve, as everywhere in life, is a steep one, but we learned many, many lessons. So I think it was good to do this endeavor, to go into the IPCEI. Thanks very much, DG Grow, and especially also DG Comp, because you were really, really bombarded with projects to have gone through this. I would also like to say that member states also went through different stages. I mean, Falco, you know very well, Austria in the very beginning was extremely present in hydrogen. Government changed. There was a little bit of reluctancy, especially in mobility. Now comes back again. So it also has to do with political visions in the member states, and it's complex. However, we are on now. And I love very much this idea that hydrogen is integrated in other technology flows. You mentioned the circular economy, and this is the main thing. Hydrogen has arrived in basically the family of the clean technologies in Europe especially, but also globally. And we will continue to put our finger into the wounds, but also to see the positive points. Looking forward to disseminate the paper by DG Grow. Looking forward to continue this debate. I would like to thank you all, the panelists, to have given their opinion, their points here. Also, thanks to the audience being so actively involved in the chat. And we tried to cover all questions. The next H2 talk will look into the RED 3 implementation. We have seen in the chat and also in the discussion today that demand side activities are super important. RED 3, Renewable Energy Directive, third recast, is a possibility to spur the demand. We are looking into it Thursday, 5th of June, in our next H2 talk at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Thanks very much for today. Have a lovely end of the day, end of the week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Ευχαριστώ.